First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. We're kind of doing this on the go. I have a great idea for a topic that actually came to mind when I was looking at Russ's course on complacency. Yes, guys, Russ will have a course on complacency. It will be available shortly at the Academy Hour. Trust and Believe. I'll promote it on my venue so you guys are aware of that course. It's a needed course, but he touched on something today that I never thought of before. I mean, I know it exists, but we definitely never did a topic on this. And it's about high-level complacency. Like, we've talked about complacency on the front line, but we never talked about high-level complacency for management and administration. So I think this would be a great topic and something that we can explore when we come back from our sponsor. But Russ, you agree that this is a great and needed topic, correct?
Oh yeah, that's why I devoted an entire video in the series to it, because it's something that can be, you know, equally dangerous as just your own personal level of complacency on the job.
Yeah, so Russ, I think it's a great idea. I'm actually interested to explore this topic. We're kind of just going to wing it, but this is where the experience comes in. So again, we come back from our sponsor, we'll be talking about high-level complacency, not frontline complacency, but how high-level complacency and how it can trickle down to the front line. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. We'll go to our sponsor, and when we come back, we'll be talking about high-level complacency.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we're back. Hey, Russ, what
Hey.
I saw of your training so far is phenomenal. It's definitely needed. Just a reminder, guys, my stuff's already available. The links are in the description. You'll see it in the description if you want to take the course or take a package deal. There's 2 courses available. But I'm even learning something new just by watching the courses that our peers are putting through. And first off, Russ, just a little bit about your course. What is the course that you're going to be presenting at Academy Hour in the near future?
It's going to be complacency and corrections, and it's going to deal with the psychology of complacency. And sprinkled throughout the course, I have a bunch of different examples that happened to me, examples that I know of for my years in corrections with California Department of Corrections, and working at a couple of different institutions, including San Quentin. And also the second one that I've done now, which you've seen, and I was really proud of. I felt like it was going to be really good when I finished it last night. Deals with what I call institutional complacency. And that's a complacency that kind of trickles down from the top, but also spreads to the side when you have bad habits that are developed by groups of individuals who pass them on to other individuals, and it's kind of self-perpetuating.
Well, complacency is coming into light right now because of what happened with Epstein, you know, at the Manhattan Correctional Center. So, you know, basically, if frontline is complacent, then everybody looks at the supervisors to see if they were kind of reinforcing that complacement or if they did anything to stop it. Now, I know that perspective, but then you mentioned some really good examples of high-level complacency with administration just being complacent and having it trickle down. So that's a little bit different. We had, and for Jeffrey Epstein, it's okay. So we know the front line's being complacent, and basically did the higher-ups do anything to stop it? We got that. But what happens if administration or the high-level management's complacent? So I'm assuming we're thinking about, I mean, right off the bat, because we're winging this right now, so this is definitely experience talking here, but I'm thinking about one level of complacency that comes to my mind right off the bat. And by the way, guys, me and Russ really haven't discussed this, so we're really going to be winging this, is if frontline is bringing concerns to management and management is just ignoring it because they think that, well, it's not going to happen here. You know, even though these things are happening at other facilities, it's not going to happen here, or not with this inmate population. I mean, I think that's one level where you're not listening to the front line. And I believe that you were having that come across in your class today, the one I took, the demo. So basically, I guess right off the bat, the question is that a level of complacency where you have these concerns and management is just ignoring the front line because they're thinking like, those concerns are not going to happen here?
I think that's a matter of where sometimes they're not addressing them, and there can be a host of issues for that. Sometimes they really don't understand the gravity of the situation. They're in denial about the situation even occurring. They're desensitized to it for one reason or another. It can be they've just heard it so much, but nothing has happened yet, you know? And in my course, when I talk about that, I talk about some serious consequences that resulted in staff deaths because they just weren't paying attention and they weren't doing anything to be proactive in their approach to the situation, which could have stopped and alleviated much of this in the first place. And so it has to be one of those things where admin, instead of looking through things through a lens where they're looking through it where they've been desensitized to it because they've heard about it so much, they're in denial, they have a lack of knowledge, or they have, you know, a lack of being prepared with responding to the specific type of threat that staff are bringing to their attention. And they've just got this lens there, and that lens is blinding them. You know, it's putting those blinders on to where they're complacent to it because they're not digging deep enough to get to what the situation calls for.
When you mention desensitized, because you do mention that as one of the four things with complacency, could it also be that they're also far removed from the front line that's not immediate to them, so they don't really understand the threat?
It's one thing to experience a unit by reading the log books and the reports and things like that, and it's another thing to be down there walking amongst it and watching it happen. Sometimes the gravity, the severity of the situation really doesn't come across. And that's why I was generally, I won't say all the time, but I was generally blessed with supervisors that were the kind that were down there, you know, at least once a week if they could help it, and out there on the front line. But sometimes when you're trying to dial things in from a distance, it's not real to you. You know, it's that the blood and guts and the machinations that people go through, it just doesn't mean as much.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a level of immediacy that actually brings it home. I mean, again, me being on a higher level, I am far removed. So I believe I lose a sense of it, but I'm always mindful because I do have that experience on the front line, and I do try to keep my mind with that experience. So when there's an issue that occurs, I like to picture myself back on the floor going through it, just so I know that, okay, I try my best to understand the situations that the officers are facing. So if you have an inability to relate to that front line, or you've removed yourself so far from it where you can't even look back and understand what it's like to be on that front line, to me, that's a problem because that minimizes the actual work that must be done and the work that's actually done every day, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's, you know, I have to hand it to the administrators that do try and put themselves in the shoes as if they were there in the moment, as opposed to just reading it and being complacent from the standpoint of then they think they understand the totality of the incident. Because, you know, that's just simply, first of all, it's not possible. And second of all, it's unrealistic to the point of, at least if you try and think about it from frontline staff's point of view, maybe you can address it better. But there's so many of them that they just read it and I don't understand what their problem is. And they become very dismissive at times. And once you've decided to become dismissive to your underlings, you've really kind of sacrificed your leadership role. You're unable to, you know, effectively lead them from that point. Because who wants to follow someone that's dismissive of your viewpoint?
So I guess definitely one of the concerns would be not listening to the front line, not, understanding what their perspective is, the heightened dangers of the job, and just kind of minimizing it. And again, reason being is because maybe you're not there working that floor. So if ever those things are brought to your attention, one thing is you should go out to that floor and visit that area, see what they're talking about from a bird's eye view, but also really try to get yourself in the mindset of that front line to understand the dangers. And the only way you can do that is by keeping that door open so frontline can tell you what those concerns are. And I think when you have management, because here's the funny thing too, because you're talking about institutional complacency. So first off, let's define that real quick. Now, I'm only taking that as administration and management, but what do you really mean by institutional complacency?
Just breaking it down real quick. In my course, I define that there's two types of it, and one type of it I call top down. And top down means from the administration to line staff, where it's the policies that they have in place, the procedures, and their guidance, which because of complacency takes root within them. And then the side-to-side or peer-to-peer or department complacency, in which bad habits develop and they're kind of fueled by bad policy, and people have a real hard time stamping out that type of thing because it just gets to that point. And there's a story that I tell of where this guy, he just says, well, we've been doing it that way. And that kind of says it all. We've all come across that person that's, well, we've been doing it that way. And that way has just not got anybody killed or hurt severely up to that point because of luck. Not planning, training, knowledge, any of those things. Just luck.
Well, that's why management or admin is supposed to revisit those policies at least once a year, just to make sure those policies can still be applied. A lot of times, corrections is evolution. We're constantly changing, and most of the changes come from frontline notice of a concern, bringing it to management, and hopefully management listens and say, okay, well, we need to change this policy, but they have to get on it immediately. It's something that you can't sit around and wait for. So, usually what you do is you do a memo first until you can implement it in policy. But I think part of it is knowing that those policies that we have, they're not solidified. At any moment, they can change because new situations arise, and you have to be open to that. And the only way you're open to that is by allowing the front line in to communicate with you, to tell you, hey, that may have worked in the past, like you mentioned, but it's not going to work today. And we need to sit at this table and really discuss where we're headed.
It's a matter of sometimes just bad tactics and not being able to recognize what's coming down the road, because the tactics that you have in place and the tactics that staff are teaching to each other or adopting are, complacent in and of themselves, or dangerous or deadly. And it's just hard to recognize because no one's bothered to call anyone on it yet, or they just haven't bothered to critically think through what they're implementing.
So, Russ, let me ask you a question, though. So from institutional complacency, what are some of the signs that high level is being complacent?
I think that we talked about a couple of different things before that we've seen with inmates, in fact. Are you noticing that staff are tending to do things like file more and more grievances? Does it seem like the meetings that you're having with those staff, are they becoming more heated? Are there situations that you're going through where there doesn't seem to ever be any resolution to what's going on? And that tends to be the point at which staff feel like they don't have anything left to lose because their back isn't being had, and it's just that blindness. And whether it's willful on the part of administration or whether it's just the fact that they can't even recognize that they're not seeing, it doesn't really matter. It's having the same effect on staff regardless.
I would like to think nowadays too, when we're desperate for numbers and as opposed to quality, we just tend to put anybody out in a post thinking that just anybody can handle that job, or we shut down posts really not understanding how that creates a ripple effect. I think the big thing here is basically the policies that we mentioned, making sure that the policies are, can adapt and adjust. That's one thing. And then making sure that, people understand that, or higher level understands what it takes to be on the front line, the threat that's there, being able to walk around and really understand that threat from a frontline perspective, and then kind of understand how they're managing their facility. Like in some cases, you could have trips that go out, and in order to get the trip out, you lose staff on the floor, and then you may have some management that doesn't want to hire because they're worried about the overtime. And it's like, yeah, but we need a body. We need two bodies. We're already under. So I think them kind of not really, if they're focused more on the money side of things, but they're not focused on the safety and security side, I think that also has been proven to be very detrimental to the profession when you have people that are in these positions for the numbers and not in it for the safety and security, and they wind up just micromanage everything to kind of keep things under a certain budget, but not realizing that we work in a world where, excuse my French, shit happens and you're gonna have to pay. And if you're more focused on the amount of money you're spending and not focused on the level of safety and security that's needed to run that facility on a daily basis, you're gonna get people hurt.
And the thing is boy, I tell you what, for what little you expend in some overtime or some extra coverage or something like that, it's always going to be cheaper than the liability you face if somebody gets hurt. And that doesn't matter whether it's an inmate or whether it's an officer. All of your savings just evaporated.
Well said, Russ. I mean, listen, this was just a quick dialogue. We just wanted to get it out there that we've always had that perspective of frontline being complacent. But the question is what happens when administration or higher level is complacent, and how it trickles down? Because we always talk about higher level managers be in trouble if they, reinforce complacency by not doing nothing. But what about if they're leading the way? What about if it is from the top down? And Russ, just out of curiosity, if frontline, is in the belief that administration is being complacent, that they're not being proactive, they're being more reactive, what can frontline do?
I think that's the point at which frontline really has to, buckle up, stand up straight, and adhere to the policy, to the procedure, and to make sure that they leave a paper trail, along with stuff saying, you know what, this is what we're headed for, and we've told you. And then when it happens, we're not at fault.
Yeah.
Pass that buck, back up the line, cover yourself with paperwork, and make sure that you're in compliance with policy and procedure.
Yeah, Russ, I agree with you 100%. I would also like to add as a caveat that don't generalize it's management or administration. Go after someone specific. Put their name on there, because if you put their name on there, it forces them to react. They can't defer it to somebody else. Like I notice when a lot of people make complaints, it's like management, administration. Well, there's multiple people in administration. There's multiple people in management. So you're not holding anybody responsible. But if you go in and say it's Hamilton or it's Gangi, well, that forces Hamilton and Gangi to act. That forces them to go the extra mile. So, it forces them to at least look into it. If you hold someone responsible to that, they'll be the ones that will go on the floor, because they'll be the ones that say, well, you know what? He spoke to me. He's putting my name on it. So I want to cover my own ass and do something. So if anything, get that person to do something by holding them responsible.
Absolutely. That's the thing is we need to hold people's feet to the fire. We talk about accountability from the top down all the time. Well, you know what? That's a two-way street. It goes back up. And we need to be able to call attention to this. Part of the other thing, and one of the things that I think that you and I, although we don't talk about this, I think it's evident from what we do, is that we try and give people the concepts and the words to use to be able to express this back upwards towards administrators. You know what? If we're going to hold their feet to the fire, we need whether it's filing a grievance or just putting it on paper and showing them, look, this is an unsafe way to do this. We shouldn't be releasing 3 dorms at a time. We should only be doing 2, or no more than 15 cells at a time, whatever it is. Because what happens is you start to get comfortable about the way you're operating things because nothing's happening. Well, you know what? Nothing's not going to happen forever.
You're 100% correct, Russ. Just to kind of put in closing, guys, you know, you want to hold somebody responsible if you feel they're being complacent again from a higher level. Sometimes management may not realize, you know, the significance behind the policies or the importance of listening to that front line and really understanding why something may have to change. And you don't want just someone who's a yes sir or a yes ma'am where they're an upper level management and anytime there's a request that comes down the way, they yes it to death, yes it to that, without realizing that there's a ripple effect that, you know, you're in the office comfortable, but on the front line, they're dealing with it hands-on, and you're just saying yes blindly without understanding how staff has to scramble or how it increases the dangers for staff on that floor. So again, you know, you have to be wary of what you're implementing, and the only way you can really do that is to get yourself back on that floor and to try to get yourself in the mindset of that frontline professional. Because if not, I will tell you one thing, and Russ mentions it in his class he offers, is that if you are far removed from the front line and you make no effort to connect with them, you're going to become desensitized to what it's like to be on that front line, which means that you're right. You're going to read in a logbook or in you know, some type of command or whatever it was, an incident log or whatever it is, and it's not going to be, you know, hands-on with you. It's going to be totally different. It's different reading it than actually going out there and living it. So you have to leave yourself open the front line because they're going to tell you what it's like to live that. And if you don't, that's a problem for me. That's a problem because that, again, it's just not going to put you in a perspective that's really going to be beneficial to the facility, beneficial to the front line, beneficial to yourself, because in the end, you're just not exposing yourself to the immediate threat of working in that environment. You know, all because the facility is quiet doesn't mean it's always going to be quiet. And if you have administration up above being complacent, that's definitely going to trickle down. And the thing about this is that if administration or management is not doing what they're supposed to do, you're going to lose the whole facility. And with that is going to be obviously the safety of staff, safety of inmates, anybody that comes into that facility. Russ, you have anything in closing?
You know, just going back to the thing about complacency, I think this is you know, good that we've exposed that that's a potential avenue of which complacency comes into our lives, comes into our department, comes into our unit or whatever. So you know, part of being the responsible professional that you want to be is to be attacking these things. Don't just let things go by day after day. You know, if we're going to claim that administration is complacent in some way and is putting our lives in jeopardy, well, we can't be complacent in return and just think that that we don't have any power, that we shouldn't do anything, that we can't do anything. We need to struggle. You know what? Maybe there's some great people right up above you in the chain there that, you know, if you flag them down with the right paperwork and present your case in a professional manner and show them the danger that's being presented, maybe they can take action. Maybe they can help you out. Maybe they can change that policy. Maybe they can give you better tactics and training. But don't just sit there and take it, because that's not part of being a professional either. You know, there's a reciprocal complacency is probably the worst thing at all, which, you know, they're complacent, so I'm going to be complacent. So they're going to be complacent because I'm complacent. That's not going to help anyone down there in the trenches.
You're 100% correct, Russ. You see a lot of people that get frustrated with the job and then just give up. But at the end of the day is, I know it's frustrating. I know you've been disenfranchised, but you can't allow that to happen. 2 wrongs don't make a right. You have to fight tooth and nail. You know, if you have that management that's complacent, then keep on fighting until you're able to back them in a corner. But in the end, if you give up, then you're putting yourself at risk as well. You have to go the extra mile. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this topic. This was just a quick free flow. I'm sure we'll probably cover it again because as we think about it, maybe more ideas will come into mind. But as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Don't forget, guys, Russ has a course that's going to be coming out shortly about complacency. I have 2 courses available now. Check out the link in the description. And just great topics. This was a great conversation, Russ. Thank you. And guys, if you haven't, real quick, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. Stay safe.